The Acolyte was the worst Star Wars ever produced, and after Renew, The Acolyte failed, a small minority of fans have banded together to try and go after those they blame for the cancellation of their beloved show. But it's not working. Mollie Damon from Star Wars Explained tweeted out on September 4th a document that seems like it was made by Rewriting Ripley podcast. We're not quite sure, but it definitely came off as a coordinated attack against three big creators in the space, and they even dragged Star Wars Theory, the largest YouTube channel talking about Star Wars, into the mix. And it didn't go well. But just make sure you stick all the way to the end, because seeing how YouTube responded to all this is kind of hysterical. The accusation in the tweet was pleading with YouTube support to demonetize three channels in particular. It was Geeks and Gamers, Nerdrotic, and RK Outpost for their comments and ideas regarding women of color. Specifically, here's what it said: prolonged insults and incitement of targeted harassment towards women of color. Specifically, Kelly Marie Tran as Rose Tico, Moses Ingram as Riva, and Amanda Sandberg as May and Osha from The Acolyte. But as I said, this didn't just start with Star Wars Explained. It involved what seemed like a group of content creators who have banded together to stamp out, or at least just demonetize, really, people that they disagree with or people they blame for the Acolyte show, but they're trying to hide it behind this idea of these channels going after women of color. Now, I will say channels like Geeks and Gamers, Nerdrotic, and RK Outpost are far more vulgar than I enjoy, and some of their content I am not in favor of, I do not agree with. Just because I'm making this video doesn't mean I agree with everything that they say or do, but I think it brings up a really interesting point. And then this document pulled in Star Wars Theory, and that's where everything got really kind of interesting, as he's released his own video kind of showing some of the receipts, the behind the scenes of some of these content creators. We're going to get to that, but before we do, let's talk about why this is happening. What's really at the core here? Even if you look at that full document, which I'm not going to read, you can go find it yourself, but they link a number of different videos as giving reason for this or example of this harassment. And even when they do that, they're showing only bits and pieces taken out of context. Specifically, Geeks and Gamers, who was pulled out of this for how he talked about Kelly Marie Tran, who was Rose Tico from the sequel trilogy. They misquoted him. They pulled him out of context. They said that he was telling people or showing hate towards Kelly Marie Tran, but in reality, this is what he said.
Rose Tico is a bad character. Rose Tico is an objectively bad character. Rose Tico is one of the worst characters in the history of Star Wars. That doesn't mean anything negative towards Kelly Marie Tran. I think Kelly Marie Tran is great. I think she's a very sweet person. And I think she deserves far better. Rose Tico didn't deserve better, but Kelly Marie Tran definitely deserved better.
But that's not talked about. That's not shown. Just the part where he disagrees or really despises the written character of Rose Tico, which many other people have said. Now, this does not justify in any way, shape, or form the hate that many of these folks have gotten on Twitter and gotten on Instagram for their acting in Star Wars. There is no place for that. But the accusation here is saying that it's these YouTube channels that are responsible for the actions of other people, even though, as you've seen, they're going to say, no, don't go show hate. We can be upset at the character of Riva, the character of Osha and May, the character of Rose Tico, but not go after the actresses. There's plenty of other characters that people have complained about, but these are the only ones that fit the narrative that's trying to be shown here by Star Wars Explained, or more specifically by Mollie Damon. Ultimately, this is not about Star Wars. This is a clash of ideologies. This isn't about who can and can't watch Star Wars, but instead it's about if you share the same ideology as me, then we are going to agree. And if you have a different ideology than me, I'm going to go after your livelihood. And it's these same divisions we are seeing all over the place, not just in Star Wars. And that's really the issue here. That's why the Acolyte failed, because it tried to push an ideology, an idea, an understanding about the universe of Star Wars that is antithetical to even the foundation of what Star Wars is. And when people say that and recognize that and then criticize the writing and then criticize the acting, which isn't always necessarily on the actress or the actor, but also on the director and the writer, people start to get a little bit upset. And then you have things like the claims that have been brought by Amandla in the most recent videos that she shared and the conversations and the diss track. You can see how this all starts to be about an ideology, not even Star Wars itself. And this is why, I've said it already, but I'm going to say it again, this is why Acolyte failed. Because when you start to make this about a specific agenda and ideology, the mass appeal goes away. When instead you have Star Wars that can and should appeal to everyone. Why? Because it deals with truths that are universal to all human beings. When you start to shift that away, therein lies the real issue. And so creators, some of which do so in a vulgar way, push back against a show that they see as going against the very fabric and understanding of what Star Wars is. And they do so passionately and sometimes in ways that I wouldn't agree with. But again, I can disagree with you and not go after you, not hate you, not despise you. I can even use strong language to disagree, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's hate. Vulgarity isn't always hatred. There are some moments that are brought up here that I would say, yeah, we shouldn't engage in, but shouldn't is different than trying to build a case to YouTube to say that this channel, and not just these videos, but this channel should be demonetized across the platform. So we're at the place where now the Acolyte has been canceled. It gives the opportunity for those who were fans of the Acolyte to play this victim card, to say that this is the reason creators and people who didn't like the Acolyte are the reason it failed. No, the reason it failed is quite simply people didn't watch it. Now, you could say that's partly due to the bad reviews that creators gave it, but I've been hard pressed to find someone who liked the Acolyte who hasn't in some way been influenced by Disney or hasn't in some way enjoyed all of Disney's Star Wars to this point. I think they go hand in hand. If you've been a fan of everything Disney up until the Acolyte, you probably enjoyed the Acolyte show. Why? Because you've bought into their ideology, their perspective of truth, their perspective of what Star Wars is and isn't. And it's far, far away from the galaxy that we've all come to know and love. The thing that's crazy about all this is Mollie Damon and her supporters have been railing against content creators and those in this space for doing hateful things and coordinated attacks and all these things, and they're doing the exact same thing. It's hilarious. It's hilarious that they can't even see that because they're so blinded by their passion. Now, to be fair, Star Wars fans on both sides can be blinded by their passion, but to have a coordinated reposting, now you might push back and say, yeah, it just went viral. Sure, it possibly did, but it also felt very coordinated, just like hashtag Renew the Acolyte felt very coordinated, right? It's kind of going hand in hand, and that was the claim, is that the review bombing was coordinated by a certain handful group of creators who have this backdoor deal and talk about all these things. And that's exactly what this seems like. Even the core claim itself is that this is about hate and hate speech and being hateful towards a minority group. But in reality, look at the hate that's being spewed as a result of all of this. People wishing that creators would die and go off the platform and disappear. And I mean, the comments, especially towards Star Wars Theory, who like him or hate him, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't be saying things like, I wish a piano was dropped on your head. And a lot of this was in response to his claim or his frustration towards Wikipedia in the changing of all the things of the Acolyte. But that same stuff happens again and again from this crowd directed towards creators, particularly creators who have a conservative leaning, who are not progressive, who are not in the ideology of the quote unquote Disney shill in crowd. Here's the hilarious thing. They think it's all about money. They think that everyone is motivated by money just like they are. That's what Star Wars Theory showed in his video. I'll link it down below. You can go watch it, but he shows how kind of the obsession with views and money is what is behind Star Wars Explained. And they assume that that's all these other content creators, that if the money was not there, they would stop making videos. And so what do? They go after the monetization, as if monetization is the only reason people are talking, that if their channel was demonetized, they'd be done. But in reality, demonetization is not the same thing as being banned from YouTube, having your channel being taken down off of YouTube. If they really felt seriously about these claims, they wouldn't be going for demonetization. They'd be trying to get the channel removed from YouTube. And YouTube has done that before. When people break the terms and community guidelines, they are removed, not just from monetization. They can be removed from monetization, but the channel can just be completely deleted off of the platform. So if this was really an issue, why are they just going after the money? Well, they think that the money is the core point, but it's not. It's not. So many of these creators, that even the ones they're talking about, yes, they make a living off of this, and it is kind of messed up to go after their living, but that's just it. It's not solely about the money. These creators have built fan bases where they can actually probably sustain themselves, not just off the monetization and AdSense from YouTube. And you see this across many different parts of YouTube. Every creator that's kind of big doesn't rely on views. Instead, what do they rely on? They get sponsorships that work with their audience. In fact, they actually even get bigger when they get to the size of Star Wars Theory and some of these bigger channels on YouTube like Mr. Beast and Ryan Trahan. They start their own businesses that bring in revenue from their fans to sell a product, whether it be candy like candy bars or Joyride, or it be lightsabers or whatever it would be. They start selling a product and people get upset and say, oh, it's horrible that they talk about Star Wars Theory talks about his lightsabers. And so whatever, like this is their livelihood, because why? They don't have to rely on views. They've built a big enough audience to sustain themselves off of these other businesses. It's not all about the money. It's not all about the money. It's about Star Wars. And that's the passion that these folks have. But when you become a Disney shill and you just want to get in the pockets of Disney and get sponsored and get to be flown out and experience all these things and do all these cool things, like it becomes about the money and the fame for other people. But really, in reality, for most creators, that's really not the main desire. There's so many other ways, easier ways to make money than trying to make a name for yourself on YouTube. I should know. We're still only at 900 subscribers. If you want to help get the channel to being monetized, you can. You don't have to. I don't care. I'm not doing this for the money. If I was doing this for the money, I would have quit probably a long time ago, because this is not as profitable as you would want it to be, because I'm not as big. But again, I don't make these videos, and many creators don't make these videos because of the financial gain that we get. Now, yes, it'd be great to be able to be paid to do something that I enjoy and love, but I already do that with my job. I don't think I'd ever quit my job. Instead, we have to realize that this is more about the problem and the difference of ideology. So here we come to it. How did YouTube actually respond? So YouTube looked at the videos that were in question and said, these do not break our terms or our community guidelines, terms of service. They don't. And so the videos are fine. And so As a result, because they failed at renewing the Acolyte, because they failed at this attempt to report and really just virtue signal on X, because you can report all these things without necessarily having to go to the Twitter route, right? You can go onto YouTube and you can just report a video and give a reason for reporting that video, and YouTube will internally look at that and review it. But all this is just virtue signaling to say, hey, look how good we are. Look how morally superior we are. Follow us. This is the kind of stuff that's frustrating. And all of this is stemming from the way that Disney is approaching Star Wars. Disney, since the moment they've purchased this company, has desired to have fans like Mollie Damon, has desired to create fandom in the sphere that they want it to be. And so they change Star Wars to be what they want it to be so that they can have the fandom they want. They miss the point. And in doing so, they're actually completely missing the core truth of what Star Wars is. And this is why they're never going to get it. This is why every show, every movie, everything they produce is going to miss the mark, with the exception of Andor, which I think now is just the rare exception, because they actually, I think, hit the core truth that is at the center of Star Wars. Disney is trying to turn Star Wars just into a setting where they can make, guess what? Money, because that's what it's about to them. George Lucas, much like these creators, would have produced Star Wars even if it wasn't going to be profitable. Now, did he try to make it profitable and do everything he could? Absolutely. And did he maybe go too far with the merchandising? I probably would say so. But at the root of it, he kept Star Wars. Even if you don't like the prequels, it still is Star Wars, because he didn't turn it into a setting the way that Disney has. And if you want to know what that core truth is that makes Star Wars actually really Star Wars, click right here. Hey, thanks for stopping in and watching all the way through the video. I would really appreciate it if you let me know what you agreed with or disagreed with down in the comments below. I'll be in the comment section engaging with your thoughts, and would love to open up this to be more of a dialogue. With that being said, remember, the Force will be with you always.